it's been Jokic and Butler that have been the best players in the entire playoffs. And that makes me just so glad as a basketball fan that they are meeting in the finals. And I could care less if that draws less ratings than Lakers versus Celtics, because at this point in time, I mean, I really just would not want to watch those teams as much in the finals in spite of the mega brands behind them. Welcome to In the Lab with Hoopsology. It is May 25th. I am one half of our dynamic duo here. I am joined, as always, by one of my best friends, Justin Goodrum. Justin, how you doing, man?
Doing really well. A rainy day in Denver, but can't complain. How about yourself?
Oh, man, I would love to have some of that rain down here. I was, matter of fact, just before we started, up on the roof working on my cooler, which is I don't know. It's like you're doing work on a frying pan or something when the sun's out here, but all good, doing well. Man, it has not been that long since you and I last spoke on current events here, but a lot has gone on. So we're going to talk about the draft lottery today. We're going to talk about the Lakers. We're going to talk about the Celtics, and we're going to talk about the most probable finals matchup, although it's not officially final at the time of this recording, but Denver versus Miami seems to be pretty likely here. So we're going to cover a lot today, and let's go ahead and kick this off with the draft lottery, because this was something that you and I spoke about with several guests. You know, where is Wemby going to go? What is his potential? What does this look like? Well, we got our answer. And on May 17th, Victor Wembanyama looks like he is going to be a San Antonio Spur unless something crazy happens and the Spurs are offered all the great players in the NBA, basically. San Antonio wins the number 1 overall pick, followed by the Charlotte Hornets at number 2. Oh, Charlotte. Sorry, guys. 3 goes to the Portland Trailblazers. 4 goes to the Houston Rockets. Oh, man.
Right.
And 5 goes to the Detroit Pistons. Indiana doesn't land a pick until number 7. Orlando might as well say they get the number 6 pick, and then Washington Wizards at number 8. So, Justin, your thoughts on San Antonio as a landing spot for Victor Wembanyama? Is this a great situation? Or are you less enthused about this?
I think it's a solid situation. I don't know. I felt kind of some indifference by it. And I think some slight disappointment. I mean, just to give you some information, you're probably too much TMI, but I watched this at where we had dinner out in Las Vegas at Gordon Ramsay's Burger.
Oh, yeah, nice.
So watched it on the screens there, and I was like, all right, he's going to San Antonio. So great. I don't know. San Antonio, no offense. I won't go to the extent like Charles Barkley does in disparaging San Antonio, but it's not the most just exciting town. Like, I don't know, in the NBA in terms of franchises, doesn't really get, the excitement going too much. But I will say, if we're just, from a basketball perspective, great learning tree. Tim Duncan's connected there, David Robinson's connected there, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, and then you have Greg Popovich. So there's a great learning tree for him to develop and learn. Many foreign players have come through there. Now the question is, there's been, if we're being honest, there's been not the greatest players recently that have had a great transition there. Notably, DeMar DeRozan. If you compare him in San Antonio to him in Chicago, there is no comparison there. So I think that is a question with Victor Wembanyama. How is he going to adapt in that system? Now, I would say he's been playing professionally. So this is, in my eyes, somebody who's just somebody not lacking professional experience. So I think that plays into his favor to accept the coaching of a Greg Popovich. But we'll see. I'm skeptical at the moment, but great for San Antonio. I mean, they're celebrating in the streets. I don't know if you saw the videos online, but they were going nuts when they announced their draft orders. So good to be a San Antonio Spurs fan these days.
They certainly have not had a lot to celebrate of late.
That's true.
I do echo some of your concerns. And I think to a larger point, has that culture been lost over the last couple years in that they've been at the bottom of the pack for a while? I mean, is Coach Popovich, still no disrespect. I mean, he's arguably the greatest NBA coach of all time. So I will set the bar that high, but is this at a point now where he's going to be able to tune things up and all of a sudden become a winner? Because as we know, with young top talent, you don't want to wait around and have your stars um, start to either develop bad habits or start to get a little bit antsy and a little uncertain about the situation. So that is one of my biggest question marks in San Antonio, and I think they should, and it sounds like they will, be targeting a lot of veteran free agents to come in next year and
Yeah.
sort of show Victor Wembanyama, Victor Wembanyama the ropes, so to speak. So I do have questions, but obviously we will just have to wait and see on that. Any thoughts about the rest of that draft order? I mean, obviously our condolences to Houston and Detroit, the the bottom of the league that land at fourth and fifth respectively. But any other thoughts about the draft lottery overall?
Not too much. I think this is a pretty deep draft from all accounts. So I think it's going to be interesting to see which teams jockey for a position. I'm biased, Chicago really leveraged their future for their current roster and they paid for it. So
Mm.
they're pretty irrelevant for the next 2 or 3 drafts. So it kind of sucked to see them not even have any type of a chance. So just selfishly, that was a bummer. But in terms of the rest of the teams, I think not letting Victor, I don't think it's Victor or nothing. I think there's a lot of other solid players in the draft. So kind of looking forward to seeing how draft day plays out.
Yeah, I think the next thing to look for is if any of those teams, especially Houston, I would say, if they trade up to that number 2 pick
Yeah.
to try and draft Scoot earlier
Mm.
than other teams. I think that's now kind of the big drama that's left over, the question that remains for the draft. But we will see that. The draft is coming on June 22nd. So if you want to tune into that, that's when that is dropping. Let's talk conference finals. And let's start in the West. We have get your broom out after all the parity, after all the competition of the first 2 rounds. We have a sweep in the Western Conference, uh, a very entertaining sweep, a very closely contested sweep, oddly enough, but a sweep nonetheless. And the Lakers fall victim to the broom. They are out in 4 games. I want to ask first and foremost just your overall impressions on this season in LA. I mean, it, one of the greatest roller coaster rides, I would say, in recent NBA history. Do you have, if let's say you were a Lakers fan, I mean, do you have
Yeah.
overall positive feelings on this, or do you have impending doom feelings with LeBron making retirement comments? And we'll touch on that topic in a minute, but keeping focused on the season, what are your feelings towards it?
Well, I think when you have a big superstar on your team, this is what you sign up for. And especially a superstar like LeBron, similarly to like a Kobe, you're going to go through this from time to time. And with LeBron, probably more frequently. And being put in the shoes of a Lakers fan of this season, maybe I'm just an internal optimist, but I would feel pretty good about this season, despite being swept. Denver
I
is the
agree with
elite
that.
team. Denver finally is at full strength. They're fully experienced. They're playing with arguably the best player on the planet. And through all the roster changes and turmoil, the Lakers were still able to at least make it competitive despite being swept. So I think there's a lot of positives being taken from that. I think the future, there's honestly more question marks with Anthony Davis than there is with LeBron. I mean, if
Mm.
LeBron wants to stay, LeBron stays mostly healthy. Here and there through the regular season, he might be hurt, but I mean, it's rare. I can't remember. I mean, how many seasons has LeBron been like critically injured? I can't really think of
Just
that right now.
one in LA
Yeah,
that I can think of,
yeah,
and part of that might have been just shutting it down to tank
yeah.
at the end of the year.
There
I
you go.
believe that was his first season in
Yeah.
LA. Yeah.
And so, with the great thing about LeBron, and we're talking about this off air, is his game's so versatile that his numbers. Let's say, I mean, honestly, I don't think it's inconceivable for him to play till he's 50. I don't think that's impossible. And with a lot of these athletes we've seen with Tom Brady and just combat sports athletes, retiring is extremely difficult. And I think for LeBron, when they're asking him about his retirement, he's upset. I mean, he said himself he's used to winning championships. I mean, how many times has he been to the conference finals? A million times. I mean, that doesn't
Right.
really get him excited. It's just like whatever. He's a competitor. He wants to win. So I get his disappointment. But I think looking at context, putting it in perspective, I think he'll be pretty happy. My question for him would be, as a long-term future of this franchise, can he have a second like Anthony Davis who is unreliable and
Mm.
who is injury prone and really inconsistent? I just don't know. Um, I'm pretty just not, I don't know, optimistic about Anthony Davis being in his franchise long term.
Yeah, and to that point, the whole narrative around LA when Anthony Davis was first brought in was, this is going to be your team. I am going to gradually hand this team to you. Do we see at any point in time a shifting of gears for both of those players? Because at this point, LeBron is still obviously the alpha and the leader
Yeah,
of that team.
it's LeBron's team.
And as generous as LeBron can be on the court, and a guy that almost always makes the smartest play available, it is still, I mean, he will be the primary ball handler. We saw with Russell Westbrook that did not work with him being a primary ball handler. Um, but I don't think LeBron can win a title now as the 1A. I think he's got to be the 1B, as incredible as he is, and as much credit as I give him for that 40-point game four that he had. I mean, that was a great performance in spite of flaming out in the fourth quarter. And it would be unfair also to just isolate game four on Anthony Davis. This is a continuous thing, and I don't see clearly the solution. So that's kind of my big question mark, I guess. And I just don't know that there's an answer right now that we can see a way for LeBron to downshift, because he is so versatile and talented, as you mentioned, that it just seems like the ball and the reliance from the teammates automatically just kind of gets thrown into his lap for him to take care of. So I'm not sure where that goes.
He's a very, I don't know what's the word for it. I don't think he has that much perspective when he's trying to suggest players on the roster. I know he'll say, "Oh, I don't suggest players. That's the GM and that's the owner's decision." That's a lie. LeBron has clear influence, and we've seen it even with Cleveland, the Heat. I mean, the guys that he had on there, they weren't spring chickens exactly, right? These weren't like younger players, and so I think for the first time through the trade with Rui Hachimura and then Austin Reeves, these are future pieces that you can build around. Um, like you were saying, Matt, they need a younger superstar, and not Kyrie Irving. I mean, we just don't know. It's separate. I mean, let's just rule out just his off the court shenanigans, his past track record. I mean, Kyrie Irving's older as well. I mean, if you're looking towards the future, you would think that'd be more of a priority as compared to being a superstar. But I think LeBron just wants that. Just I want the superstar now, and just let me just win the title now. And I just don't know if that's going to bear fruit. I don't know if that's a wise strategy. We've seen that fail over the years. So we'll see. I don't. I just think that press conference was just him in the moment, just being devastated. I mean, I think he is kind of a sore loser.
Mm.
He takes it a little bit personal, but that shows how competitive he is. I don't think that's
Well,
necessarily a bad thing. So
He's had so much success. I
yeah,
don't blame him for having a high bar, like
no,
you mentioned
of
earlier.
course, yeah.
So let's get this out of the way. Let me ask you just point blank percent chance LeBron retires and does not play next season.
5% chance, and then 0% chance that is real. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm with you. I would say maybe 1 to 2% chance he retires. I mean, he had a great season, made history. I agree with you when you said he could play to 45 and maybe even beyond, depending on how he's able to um, continue to improve that jump shot. If he can get a more consistent outside jump shot and be like a spot up shooter, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind he'll play till he's 45 if he wants to.
yeah,
Um, with offseason priorities, Lakers sign Austin Reeves, yes or yes?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
It will be interesting. I think this offseason, and we can save this discussion for later because it's coming. But I don't know that the Lakers are this amazing free agency destination as currently constructed right now. There's not going to be a lot of mobility for them with Austin Reeves getting a pay raise. So I think we're going to have a lot of veterans willing to take the minimum to come there. But let's look now at the Eastern Conference side of things. This is a series that is still ongoing, but um, the Celtics and the Heat just came in first 3 games. I mean, first 2 games, let's emphasize, were in Boston, and the Heat just come in there and basically straight up punch the Celtics in the mouth. Like completely shocked me. I thought there may be a chance the Heat get one out of the first 2 games. I did not pick the Heat to win this series. The Celtics, I still believe, are the better team on paper, aside from the coaching side of things, as you and I mentioned in our preview. But win the third game in Miami as well. When you're expecting the Celtics to bounce back and fight for their lives, they don't. That happens in game 4, which just happened this past Tuesday. What do you see? I guess first, let me ask you this percent chance of the Celtics making history and coming back from a 3-0 deficit.
Uh, 15% chance. That might be pretty high.
No, I
Tatum
like
and
that
Brown.
number.
Tatum and Brown are elite players. I mean, I like the Celtics as they're currently constructed, and the Heat they do have some flaws, but at the same time, I think the inside the NBA guys hit it straight. I just in watching this team, they take some of this ridiculous 3 pointers. I mean, I
Hmm.
don't. I'm like just seeing how they shoot. I'm like, what is happening here? I mean, for people that criticize 3-point shooting in the NBA nowadays. When the Celtics can't hit shots, I mean, they're kind of the poster team for that because they just take
Hmm.
some like ridiculous shots. And for Tatum and Brown to be super talented for some of the shots they take, I think it's ridiculous. And I think for me, there's really, I think, 3 guys, maybe 4, 5 that could take, your kind of, I don't know what you call it, splash zone 3 pointers. That's Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, Trey Young, Kevin Durant, and maybe LeBron when he's on fire. I mean, to me, with Tatum and Brown, I think they're way better players and they're just to jack up threes. And I think that when the 3 ball's not falling, that seeps over to the defensive side of the basketball. And they just sometimes, I don't know, they don't. It's really disappointing for an elite team like this compared to Denver. Um, I think with the Celtics, this is really disappointing, and they have the way they're constructed. I can't say the players on there are inferior. You're right, Matt. In terms of roster construction, I think Celtics are better, and I think it comes down to coaching, and you have to question Tatum and Brown at this point. I mean, for the Heat just to basically outplay them as they have so far, other than I think there's a lot of question marks with this franchise moving forward. I mean, you never know. Boston has the magic. I mean, look at their baseball team. I mean, they pulled it off against the Yankees. Different sport, but you never know. But at the same time, they put themselves in quite the hole, to say the least, and I don't like their chances.
Yeah, and it's interesting because all the well, not all, but a lot of the conversation leading into the Celtics seemingly impending offseason here is, do you keep Brown and Tatum together? And my answer on that, ever since the Celtics made the finals last year, I should say, is given the success that they've had in the last 5 years, even if this season ends in a conference championship, I don't know that I want to split those guys up, even with the amount of money that they'll be demanding. Because even if you tell me like having Tatum and Brown guarantees that we're at minimum in the second round, but also maybe high likely chance if we get a couple of veterans, we're in the conference finals each year. I mean, sign me up for that, even if we don't
Yeah.
end up winning a title. And I do think these guys, being in their mid 20s, have a real chance where if you sign them, you lock them both up for the next 3 years under contract, and they both hit 27, 28 at the same time. Seems to me you're going to get a title one out of the next 5 years at minimum. I mean, of course, there's a lot of volatility with that. It's no guarantee. That's how it always is in the NBA. So if you have that talent, I think you lock it down. That's where I see things as very sure and almost certain, and I'm almost not worried for the Celtics there. You have an opportunity where you don't have a coaching controversy is what I'm going for there. And I think, your ceiling increases exponentially because you come in with a full off season next year. I guess I always tend to lean into like, hey guys, don't panic. You made it to the conference finals and you basically had no time to put together a coaching staff this off season.
Well, I'm in agreement with you, but look at the NBA so far. Look at how many coaches are available. There's been nothing
True.
but panic. So
True.
I think it's going to be panic in the offseason. And, we heard, I don't know if you probably heard about, the story that leaked about a lot of the Celtics organization being unhappy about Ime Udoka being let go
Hmm.
and, him almost getting the Brooklyn job. A lot of players seem to be not cool with that. That seems to be very inopportune timing when you're trying to go back to the NBA Finals again. So there's a lot of this weirdness with this team,
You're right.
despite their performance. And I'm in agreement. I don't think, to me, I think a lot of this, I think overreaction that a lot of these teams have been doing, I think is pretty foolish at this point. Just
Yeah.
being a fan of the Bulls, just like what their
Mm.
roster's been doing and how they've basically leveraged their future on one guy, which has been Lonzo Ball, and he's been hurt, and now it's just turning into a doomsday scenario. Like I would kill for the Bulls to make it to the conference finals every year. I think that's a pretty great existence to have, and just retooling and this finding one or two players maybe to get over the hump. I think that's awesome. So I think for the Celtics, I think the question is: do you panic or do you just show some patience? And we'll see.
Yeah, I think, obviously with a major contract potentially coming, like Jalen Brown will earn
Hmm.
based on his All NBA performance. There are going to be some major roster changes, and there's going to be some major coaching changes. I think either way. I don't think Joe Mazzulla stays the head coach, unfortunately for him, because I do think it's a really tough situation that he took over. Is almost kind of doomed to fail given how quickly it was put together and how they had to pivot. But having said that, I think you're so far ahead of 90%, maybe at least 80% of NBA teams in that you have that foundation of two elite wing players and versatile players in the NBA. So I don't know. If you Celtics fans out there are doom and gloom right now, I would just say, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. You guys are going to be back in the playoffs next year. And
Agreed.
I think competing, I would almost guarantee. And if you do end up signing and trading Jalen Brown or whatever comes of that, I still think Tatum has been amazing, and you've still got your future in pretty bright lights there. But we'll see what happens. As always, I don't want to spend any more time on the Celtics. I want to get into an amazing performance on both sides here. I mean, just to quickly sum it up, and we'll talk more about their seasons as we get into finals play, but obviously a historic run by the Miami Heat, looking to be, you and I would agree, 85% chance at least that they make the finals and are the second 8 seed in NBA history to go to the NBA finals. The 99 Knicks, of course, being the other one. So incredible season. I think cements Coach Spoelstra as maybe the greatest active coach right now in the NBA. I'm not talking overall legacy wise, because I think Popovich has that, but recent history, strategy wise, I think you got to give it to Coach Spoelstra for what he's doing in the NBA playoffs, this NBA playoffs, and this amazing run that they've had. There's been a lot of luck on their side too, but that stuff you can't control. The stuff they've had to control, they've done it so well. On the other side of this, their last 6 matchups against the Denver Nuggets, they've lost. And at a certain point in time, this miracle run might run out. The 99 New York Knicks lost to the San Antonio Spurs. And it does feel like Denver is a team of destiny with how they put down the Los Angeles Lakers, whether it was on their home court, which Denver is rocking right now. You and I have talked about how that home court isn't always necessarily the greatest home court advantage. Man, Phoenix series and on, it's been pretty lit in Denver. And shout out to Kyle Speller, the PA announcer there. Been cool hearing him over the broadcast.
It's true.
Shouting out and getting the fans hyped there. Tell me, Justin, how are you feeling about the Nuggets? How impressed are you with both Jokic and this team as a whole?
Super impressed. And finally, it's good just to see that a cohesive unit will not have to deal with the injuries, not have to deal with Jim Murray being injured or Porter Jr. being hurt or just other questions with this roster because they're really seeing them in person. They seem like a title contender and they're a really entertaining team to watch. I think just because of what's gone down with that team recently, they kind of get the Spurs kind of glaze over them, but they're a fun team. I mean, you're missing out if you don't like watching the Denver Nuggets play. I think in terms of Jokic, I think he's been incredible. I mean, you saw the 3 he hit. I think it was over. Yeah, incredible shot. So he's coming into fruition here. Michael Malone really got his teams believing. If you see the press conference footage and just them in the locker room, they seem like a complete cohesive unit on the same page. I don't want to spoil. Maybe you're just heading into the finals. I don't see how the Heat can beat them, but I do think the Heat can maybe steal a game or two. I think that's pretty reasonable. But at the end of the day, I do think, barring some kind of a miracle, I think the Denver Nuggets are going to be the NBA champions.
I agree with that. And I'll ask you your prediction in a minute on that. I do want to also piggyback on what you just said and say that one of the things that is so awesome about this Nuggets, I mean, everyone talks about Jokic, and that's warranted because he's incredible. Nobody would disagree with that. Another thing that is so gratifying, I think, is seeing that bubble Jamal Murray wasn't like the only Jamal Murray. Like, this guy is legitimately a great, I don't mean this condescendingly, but a great sidekick and a great partner for Jokic. And same thing with Michael Porter Jr. We had talks in the beginning of the season with some of the DNVR squad, shout out to those guys with Brendan Vogt, about, what do you make of this contract, this massive contract that MPJ signed? So to see him come out defensively the way he has this postseason, to avoid the injury bug, knock on wood that keeps up, of course, and to just be fearless in his 3-point shooting, I think is so rewarding in following this team, which you and I, them being our regional team, and especially for you, being in Denver area, it's just so awesome to watch all the pieces come together, all the puzzle pieces come together. Um, and so now let's go into our predictions here. I think you mentioned I mean you and I both favor the Nuggets, so that's going to be our pick here obviously. I think in terms of offensively, you have to give the advantage to the Nuggets. I think defensively as well, they're a little less banged up. Maybe you have a little more versatility with Bam Adebayo, but defensively, I see it as a draw at best for the Heat, but probably Denver just having a deeper bench at this point. I, I see them, and you have like Struess and Robinson out on the court at certain points in time, or like Kevin Love and either of those players, not great defensive players, but Spoelstra is able to scheme so well. And so I guess there's also an experience element that I think plays well for the Miami Heat in terms of where this team has been in the playoffs in the past. Obviously, the finals second place finishers in 2020, losing to the Lakers. But aside from experience and coaching, I think all other advantages, including just overall talent and best player in this series, goes to the Nuggets. So I'll throw out my pick first, and I do think Denver, and I'm assuming the Heat still playing, they're going to come into this more fatigued as well. So I'm going to pick Denver in 5 for the finals. How do you see this shaking out, Justin?
Stole my thunder. Denver in 5. I
My
thought
bad.
about 6. No. You're good. I thought, do I want to give them the Heat? I always feel like I'm disrespecting them, but I just think Denver is clearly just the elite team in this league this year. And out of respect, give the Heat one game, but I don't think they can pull off anymore.
Yeah, I think unfortunately for the Heat, we're probably going to be seeing that meme of Jimmy Butler like bent over, exhausted in the bubble finals again.
Yeah.
And credit to him, man. I mean, people are going to laugh about that or whatever, but it's been Jokic and Butler that have been the best players in the entire playoffs. And that makes me just so glad as a basketball fan that they are meeting in the finals. And I could care less if that draws less ratings than Lakers versus Celtics, because at this point in time, I mean, I really just would not want to watch those teams as much in the finals in spite of the mega brands behind them. I mean, I want to see the elite peak competition, and that's what we're getting if we get Denver versus Miami. I think Denver versus Boston maybe is more compelling in a matchup sense because the Celtics, like we said, the deeper on paper and more talented on paper. I still would pick Denver at this point in time to beat the Celtics. I would just see it going 6 or 7 games instead of 5 games like I'm predicting against Miami. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Denver just handles this. I think the momentum carries over, and I think now that Jokic makes the finals, that gives like an extra push, an extra effort. I don't think he's going to have any like blow up type situations or like technical situations or pushing Marcus Morris type situations or things like that that'll potentially get in the way of a title. I think they're locked in and they're a team of destiny.
No, agreed. Completely concur.
Anything else to touch on before we call it good here?
I don't think so. Just check out our past interviews. Plenty of evergreen content in our just Hoopsology podcast library, both on YouTube and on your favorite podcast feed over this past season. Just enjoy our discussions on NIL or our public address announcers or anything else. Just please check out our archives.
Absolutely. And we still have several interviews that I'm really
Yeah.
excited for you guys to hear, including uh, a legendary figure in the sport of basketball. So really excited for you guys to see that. I'll just put that out as a little tease here. That will be coming down the feed in the next couple weeks here. But stay with us. If you made it this far, we appreciate you listening and supporting the show. Give us a like, give us a comment, share. Always happy to hear your guys' thoughts and interact with you guys about all these topics. So appreciate you and your support. You guys take care. Enjoy the remainder of the Eastern Conference Finals and then the NBA Finals, which starts on June 1st. Until then, until our next In the Lab, for Justin Goodrum, I'm Matt Thomas. Peace out.